If you saw an alien as a child, who would have believed you and who would have assumed you're lying?
I don't think anyone would have believed me. I mean, I don't think I ever told you guys the story of when I became a writer. I was on a baseball team and I was on the bus and I used to make up stories about what happened to my family. And they were just basically lies. And then my coach said, you should become a writer. And that was the first time I was like, maybe I should become a writer because everything out of my mouth was a lie. But yeah, so no one would have believed me.
Or you could have become a lawyer.
Yeah.
For me, I'm very unique in that I think all the people that mattered would have believed me. I think my mom, my grandma, basically, when I was a kid, I got into a lot of fights. I got into a lot of trouble. And, they didn't like condone my behavior, but they always had my back. So I think everyone would have believed me. No one would have deterred me. I would have been like, no, I saw it. You're bugging. And I probably would have I would have asked the alien for some sort of a artifact, like a laser gun or something, and then I could shoot anyone who doubted me.
My dad would believe me, and then everybody else wouldn't believe us. My dad was always in my corner. So I remember one time, I think I made up a ghost story when I was like 5. All my current ghost stories, by the way, 100% real. But I made one up when I was like 4 or 5, and and my dad believed me. My mom, she doubted it.
So I think the kids in the neighborhood would definitely have believed me. But with Black people, especially in South Africa and how we grew up. So remember, we grew up separate from where white people lived and Black people lived separate. So if you understand the concept of witchcraft, there were times when we were growing up and they would say they caught a witch or they found a witch who was flying on a broom and then they got stuck somewhere. Then half the township would run and go and see or go look at this place or area where supposedly this witch was stuck there or fell, from bewitching or flying at night and stuff. So we always believed that growing up. So if someone then said, yo, there's a spaceship somewhere, you don't even have to convince anyone. So literally anyone who's able-bodied. So you might find like old grannies who can't really walk or walk too slow, or the kids would be the first ones running there or trying to go find this. And then your adults, your people in their 20s or 30s, or despite their profession, people would first want to go and see, but they wouldn't outright say, there's no way, you're crazy, you didn't see an alien. They would want to find out where, and then they'd want to go check it out before they dismiss it.
That's fair, actually. That's pretty fair,
So because of our belief in some of the, things about ancestors, about witchcraft and traditional healers or sangomas, if you want to call them that, because most people believe in that, then we kind of also believe in the power that comes with it, or that it's possible someone can make something like an alien ship land or fly or take off or even fly themselves.
Wow.
What if they didn't see it, though? What if they came and then they didn't see it? Then they would dismiss you, or they would be like, oh, they left.
Just wait for the next time. They wouldn't think you're crazy. They literally now start asking you, what else did you see? Who else was there? When do you think it's coming back?
I like it.
That's great.
They wouldn't outright dismiss you.
Welcome. This is season 4, episode number 6 of the award-winning unofficial official story. I am Koji.
I'm Dwayne.
And I'm Kat. And this is where we tell you the official story. We look at the paranormal, conspiracies, unexplained phenomena, cryptids, and true crime. And by the end, we'll tell you what really maybe happened.
We'd love to hear from you. You can send us a message by clicking on the Contact Us button on our website, or even leave us a voicemail. Click on the microphone button at the bottom of the homepage. Tell us what we got right, or tell us what we got wrong. Tell us how much you love us or hate us, or if there's a topic you think we should cover, or you think you'd make the perfect guest, let us know.
In September, we celebrate the 30th anniversary of one of the most intriguing UFO cases, and we're asking a very important question. Did aliens visit Zimbabwe to tell children the world was ending? And by the way, one thing real quick before we get into this, I just want to mention that one of the really interesting things about this case is that UFOs tend to be very European and American. So one of the things I love about this case is that it's not in Europe or America, that it's somewhere else. But before we get to that, Cat.
Our guest is I hit him on late notice. This guy's one of my dear friends. I don't see him quite enough. We met in Montreal. He literally, I think, has the distinction of being the first stand-up comic in South Africa. He actually, or at the very least, he started the scene. He grew the scene. He's a great comedian, great filmmaker, good friend of mine. I went to his wedding. And when I tell people, when I meet South Africans and I tell them I've been to Nelspruit, they lose it because they can't believe I know where that is. But the very funny, hilarious David Cow is with us. Wow. That's one of his signatures. What's up, Dave? How are you, man?
I'm all right, man. Like just me and my 3 kids. I play some golf, doing gigs. COVID was quite horrible for me. It took forever because hours went in for like 2 years, So I haven't even made movies. I think I had made over 30 movies by 2019, in over like 7 years. I produced, written, directed like 30 movies, TV shows. So I shut down my production company during COVID. And I've never reopened. But we're trying to work on a few projects. Remember Blitz Patrol, the cop movies on Netflix?
I do.
We're working on a sequel with another streamer. It's got a licensing with another streamer.
Oh, that's cool, man. Congrats. Who's the colored guy in that? Is his name Joey?
Joey Rastin.
Right. And colored means, it means something different in South Africa, in case you're wondering. It means mixed.
Originally, the first colored people would have come out of a mix of black and white. But then some of the stories are then when the Dutch arrived and before apartheid started and all that, they found black women in the Cape and then they kind of, helped themselves. And that's where most original colored people came from. But remember, my wife's dad was Greek. The mom is Zulu. So she looks colored, but she's not colored. She's mixed. So there's people that are colored and there's people that are mixed. So if your dad was German and your mom was black or African, in South Africa, you'd be mixed or you'd be half German.
Oh, I see.
But you look colored. Automatically, people would assume you are colored.
Trevor Noah is mixed.
Trevor Noah is mixed.
I see.
So people would assume, but then colored people would claim you. So, for instance, in sports, especially Joey Rastin does a set about it. We got Wade van Niekerk, one of the runners, or I think he's a medalist from the previous Olympics. You got a lot of soccer players that are colored. You got this chick now, Tyler, this singer chick who won the Emmy and yada yada. She's been all over the place from South Africa. So people will then claim whatever race that they want you to be. So
I see.
Colored people will say, yeah, no, Tyler is colored, Trevor Noah is colored. But Tyler may come from 2 colored parents, and Trevor came from a Swiss father and a Xhosa mother, and a black mother.
I see. How about Doja Cat?
Doja Cat, I don't know her mom. I don't know if her mom is white, but I know her South African dad is black. It's a black South African. But I don't know her mom. I don't know much about her history. I just know her dad is South African.
The stuff about the different definition of colored versus mixed, I'm still wrapping my head around it.
I use colored freely, and that's when I got to the States. And I don't know if it was Dwayne or someone else. I don't know why I used the word colored, and they were like, "Yo, that's a derogatory term in America."
It is.
In South Africa, it's a race. So back in apartheid, if you had to fill in forms, maybe at the bank or at Home Affairs, when it says race, even when you're registering for VAS, when it says race, there's 4 boxes. There's black, white, Indian, colored. So you'd have to pick your race. And that's it, especially obviously during the apartheid.
People who were mixed, but of a specific background of mixed, then became defined as colored. But then people who are more recently mixed, they don't count.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. You learn something new every day.
Here we have black people do this, white people do this. Maybe you might have white people do this, black people do this, Latino people do this. In South Africa, it's like black people do this, white people do this, Indian people do this, colored people do this. Each example, you can give 5 different examples. And then even within black, you can say Zulu does this, Xhosa does that. You know what I mean?
I mean, we have that with Latino culture. We'll be like, Ida Rodriguez is the best with this, but she has bits where she's talking about, well, Dominicans are like this and they think they're better than Haitians. And then the Cubans think they're better than the Dominicans. And then the Puerto Ricans think they're better than everybody because they're citizens. And there's That's her punchline. It's a good one. But we really do have those hierarchies. People from Argentina think that they're better than everybody because they're actually Italian. They're we're not Latino. We're European, actually. They make a big deal about it. Like if you try to, oh yeah, no, you're Latin American. They'll be like, no, Italian. We're okay. Okay, get over yourself. So we definitely have those hierarchies.
So, like you said, people would assume or give you a race. So people think my wife is colored because she's light skinned. And like I said, her dad is Greek and her mom is Zulu. People think my wife is colored or would say, yeah, but you married to a colored. And I'll be like, it's almost like offensive. And also for her, because one, also, colored people in South Africa speak Afrikaans. Because remember, I said they are almost
Right.
descendants of Dutch Afrikaans and a mixture of black, right? So they speak Afrikaans as their first language. So some people would walk up to my wife and automatically start speaking Afrikaans to her. And she's like, I have no clue what you're talking about.
I have a random funny story about Afrikaans. One time, before we had smartphones and we had GPS.
Oh, before phones, 1800s? No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. When we had like Garmin's, remember? One time I was out of town. I think I was was I doing comedy? I don't know. I was like in San Francisco. I did not know where I was going. My Garmin got stuck on Afrikaans and I had to get home.
That's hilarious.
And I didn't know how to change it. But I kind of understood it. So it was like if, in Spanish, if I was reading Portuguese, I was like, it was scary.
So we have 11 official languages, right? It used to be just
Wow.
English and Afrikaans, but then the Afrikaans we were forced to learn by the apartheid government, which was their language. So I know the basics just to survive writing an exam. Because if you failed a language, you failed the entire year. Back during apartheid. So most of black people in South Africa and most people in South Africa were forced to learn Afrikaans up until a certain time after.
So what I'm understanding is you would have gotten home with that
I
Garmin.
would have helped you get home to some extent, but I can never fluently go full on with an Afrikaner.
Okay, let's get the story straight once and for all, guys.
Yep, let's get us started.
Okay, so this whole story fascinates me. Thank you for finding it, Koji. On September 16th, 1994, about 60 children at the Ariel School outside of Rua, Zimbabwe, allegedly saw a UFO land in the playground while out during recess. It was like 10 a.m. in the morning. One of the children told the BBC reporter a few days later, it looked like it was glinting in the trees. It looked like a disc, like a round disc. Another said they saw something silver amongst the trees.
Some of the children also saw an alien. One told the Mail and the Guardian, I could see the little man, about a meter tall, was dressed in a black, shiny suit, that he had long black hair, and his eyes, which seemed lower on the cheek than human eyes, were large and elongated. The mouth was just a slit, and the ears were hardly discernible.
And allegedly, the aliens didn't speak using their mouths. They spoke to some of the kids telepathically. Some of the students reported being told to protect the Earth's environment and not to pollute the Earth. According to one of the students, I think they want people to know that we're actually making harm on this world, and we mustn't get too technological.
Yes. After this incident, the children went back into the classroom and didn't say anything to their teachers. However, some of the kids told their parents what had happened, and these parents went to the school to ask what happened. News of the sighting then went to the ZBC radio, then to the BBC, and finally to Harvard professor John Mack.
Most of the children continue to claim the UFO and alien beings happened. And for them, it changed their lives back as children. And for some, it continues to change their lives today. However, one of the students, Dallin, claims he made it all up and couldn't believe how the story blew up.
Actually, and one thing we should mention, I think, before I get to my part, is that when I first heard the story, I thought all the children were African.
Me too,
or
yeah.
But like a bunch of the children were white and a bunch of the children were black. So not all of them were black. And the white guy, that Dylan guy, he actually is a white guy.
Right. And here's the thing. I saw the documentary too. Not only is he white, and not only some of the the people, they were adults now and they're talking. You can hear like an African accent. Some have like slightly British accents. One has an American accent. So I don't know if she moved to America or she was American. So this was like a good school in terms of like the kids were well to do sort of. And the guy who says he made it up, it's so ridiculous. One, before I knew he was the one who said he made it up, they showed him. And my first thought was like, that guy's a tweaker. He just looked like a tweaker to me. And then he starts talking, and it's like, you, even if he made it up, he couldn't make up the fact that they all had the same story to like that level of detail. Like he's not going to be like,
Yeah.
oh, look, an alien, and then they're going to fill in all these details, and 30 years later, they all still say it. So I don't know if he's in denial or if he's just trying to, if someone paid him, but he wasn't credible to me at all. And the other kids were.
And the other thing about the story that was interesting to me is that they all just went home. They're like aliens, and then they went back into the class, and then school's over, and then they went home, and then the parents were probably like, "Hey, how was school?" And then they're like, "Oh, we saw fucking aliens."
That actually makes me believe it more though, because if you ever had something happen to you, you get like something big, like a car accident, anything, it shocks you. And you're kind of numb for a while. You're like, what on earth just went on? And it's not till later you can start to unpack it.
You kind of like are in denial that you even saw it, you know? It's a little bit different, but it's I don't know if Dave would agree. It's kind of like when you hear a white person say the N-word. In the movies, you just like, you go into straight angry mode. But in real life, you're like, this guy just say that? You like question yourself. Did I hear that?
That reminds me, this one time I was walking with my ex, we were walking our dogs, and a homeless man was touching himself like fully out. And we saw it and looked away.
You mean like his elbow? What was he his shoulder? Or no, I'm just playing. Go on.
He was touching his private part. Okay. He was jerking off. You want me to say it? He was jerking it publicly right there, just sitting on the sidewalk, just freaking going at it.
How were you dressed? Sorry.
Dressed? I was wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt. This was not a me thing. He was there. He was doing that before we even got there. We were like walking towards it, not knowing what we were really seeing, because your brain can't wrap its head around someone jerking off on the sidewalk. This is downtown LA, by the way.
That was me, by the way. Sorry about that.
It wasn't until we got up close that we were like, oh, that's what that is. And but we didn't really react until we got back. And then we talked about it. We're like, did you see it? Was I crazy?
Right.
What? And then we're like, let's not talk about it because we don't need to remember that.
David, have you heard of this story?
So I never heard of the story until you guys. But I don't know if you know, South Africa, one of the biggest issues or debates is that there's a lot of illegal immigrants, but the majority of them are Zimbabwe. If our population now should be 50 million, we are now at 63 million because we still have then a few other people from other African countries. But most of them are undocumented. They cross the border illegally. So there's a lot of Zimbabweans in South Africa currently. And then a lot of them, or most of them, are actually well educated. One of the things Robert Mugabe did when he was the president, Zimbabweans are some of the most educated people you'll ever find in the world.
Interesting.
And especially then some of them made it out and they're running big companies all over the world. They live in London and US, blah, blah, blah. So going back to the school that you say maybe this lending happened and how there was white kids and black kids. So when the settlers or when white people came and started taking over Africa, they pretty much then would build their own schools or set up their own school system, which was based where they came from. So you'll find a British school in South Africa. You'll find an American school in South Africa where they're teaching American syllabus. So then you probably had some of the kids of the white guys who were, in high positions, had money or were running the country, who then build themselves at school. And then as and when things changed or black people were allowed in certain places, then some of the black parents who could afford would take their kid to that school. So I'm trying to get then to a point where an alien or a spacecraft or foreign, whatever, landing at a school like that, at a private school, as compared to one landing in a black township school where it's just black kids, the reactions would be totally different, right? Some of the kids would be curious, like I explained the thing about witchcraft or a witch getting stuck on a broom or flying. So in a township, people would be totally we wanna go and check this thing out. If you go to the private school, then depending on our knowledge of aliens, it's literally whatever ideas America has put in movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are tall and skinny, and they've got that finger thing that do. Some of them are dressed in something. They almost look like they've got a uniform, and then you've got the long ears that are. So going back to then what a lot of the African cultural beliefs are about certain creatures that you would typically think this is made up in a book, but in Africa, they may be based on a legend or a true story that there used to be a giant called Lidimu. Because there was this story about Tselane and a giant, right? A girl who a giant would keep coming, knocking, trying to eat her, almost like the werewolf story, where the wolf ends up dressing like a woman and all that stuff.
Little Red Riding Hood.
Little Red Riding Hood, yeah. So there was a similar story about like a giant who kept trying to eat this girl, and then eventually he bends like a piece of steel, and then he eats the piece of steel to change his voice into like a softer or like a woman voice. So instead of the Little Red Riding Hood dressing up like a woman, this guy basically changed his voice, and then the next knock was no longer Tilani, wanna get us more? Tilani, wanna come and brought me some food? So some of the stories in South Africa are legendary stories, but for some of us, we grew up believing that in 1994 there was this alien spaceship that landed in Zimbabwe.
Oh, is that right?
No, so what I'm trying to get to is people believing, if someone was then to tell that story today, 30 years later, and say, yo, I'm from Zimbabwe, I grew up in this village, and one time in 1994, there was a alien spaceship that landed, and I was, so many years old, and we would listen, but more so because South Africans also are curious about Zimbabwe. So it's almost like Americans being curious about Mexico. What is it about this country that makes everybody wants to leave? So besides there's lack of jobs and the economy is bad and da 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 da, it will just be another curious thing for us to actually know. Yo, man, why come you never told me a spaceship landed in Zimbabwe in 1994? So I'm more likely now to go and ask a couple of Zimbabwean people I know and say to them, hey, did you know about this and this and this, So then going back to if you're spiritual, right? And again, to some extent, you believe in super beings, or that whether there's God or someone else or ancestors or whatever, depending on your beliefs and how you look at the world today. And then if you follow a bit of Joe Rogan and you start watching some of those videos, then you literally now start thinking, actually, maybe there were as an alien spaceship, because in America, apparently they do have aliens somewhere in some building or room or whatever that they've kept for so long,
Area 51, I think. Yeah.
So there's supposed to be, there's supposed to be a spaceship somewhere that's, being hidden or kept, or they're studying it. So then you kind of think all this nonsense that's happening in the world, to some extent, it's then because of all these supernatural things that are taking place. So not necessarily aliens, but there's something that's happening, Then you start thinking, so if you were to meet a traditional healer, or what we call a sangoma, which then if you're doing the opposite and trying to help people, then that's when you become a witch or a witch doctor, right? So the opposite of that is a healer. You become a healer, but it's almost like the training is the same. The concept of being a doctor is the same. You can either be killing people like Dr. Fauci, or you're helping people out, right?
Killing people like Fauci. Okay, go ahead.
So then some of the people who have that gift and the spiritual gift of being a traditional healer, some of them are able to travel telepathically or even talk to aliens. I've met one person, not necessarily the Zimbabwean situation, but just them being in the same room as you. They would tell you that, okay, I went to such and such a place spiritually. It's like an out of body experience, right? And I spoke to people, or I saw this type of creature, da 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 da, which almost describing what you and I might think is an alien. So for me, I'd be interested to go and find or do some more research about it, and maybe even get you guys one or two people from Zim, or at least someone I know on Twitter that's quite influential is from Zimbabwe, but he's been living in South Africa for years. But he's got quite a big following on Twitter in South Africa. I'd be curious to find a Zimbabwean that knows anything about it.
All right, we all watched episode 2 of the Netflix show Encounters, where they interviewed some of the original school children who continue to claim that what they saw was real, as well as Dylan, who says he made it up. What did you guys think of the documentary?
I mean, the documentary was well done. It was really interesting, but I'm hung up on the fact that these were kind of affluent kids. That's what stands out to me because I feel like their access to popular culture, like America, that they're very easily influenced, and their kids, like maybe they all watched Men in Black or something. And I mean, that came out after this. So no, but maybe they went into the future and then watched Men in Black, then went backwards.
We can't do our theories yet. We can't do our theories.
No.
Dwayne.
Okay.
First off, like you said, Koji, I just thought Black children. And then when I saw they were Black and white, it just gave it credibility. Because, like, if it's all white, then you're like, yeah, white people are always seeing aliens. Then if it's all Black, it just feels like when it's just one type of people, either they made it up or there's some sort of group thing going on. But the fact that it was Black and white kids, I think gives it a lot of credence. Let's think of let's say these aliens, this really happened hypothetically. Aliens are going to come and they want to give us this warning. Politicians won't count because they're already the ones doing the damage. Businessmen won't count. They're doing the damage. So they need to find people who are going to control things in the future, kids. But they also need to find the most, like, kids who may have some influence in the future, right? And these are kids at this rich school. Secondly, they're kids in Africa, the continent that is the most rich in resources, right? Mm-hmm. And because they're together, Black and white, they're the most probably accepting kids. They've already know how to accept different cultures. Because people are like, why would they come across the galaxy and just talk to these kids? Well, these kids are the perfect people to talk to.
I mean, did you know that one of those kids grew up to be Elon Musk? So
right, that's funny.
You guys know his mom is South African. One of the parents is South African. He was born,
yeah,
and then but the parents moved quite early.
Right.
And he started what now became PayPal. That's how he kind of made his first money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I mean, he hates being associated with South Africa. It's a weird vibe. There's a story that his former high school tried to get in touch with him and talk to him, and this just the story I heard. And he was apparently like, "Here's $1 million check. Just fuck off, leave me alone."
Right. That's funny. At least he gave some money.
I don't know how true the story is, but
he was actually bullied a lot because he's kind of a weird guy.
But so remember, the whole image of aliens has been created by America and their movies, right? So for me, one of my jokes has always been every time there's a disaster or even an alien story, it all happens in America. It's never in any other part of. Fascinating and hilarious to me. Like aliens are gonna pass all these other continents and leave all the space and land that we have in Africa and proper nice fresh air and just go. We want that place where there's a lot of smoke and dust and it's cramped and nobody has space to live anywhere. So like that's why I said specifically that school, those kids would have then seen, I mean, maybe Independence Day it's not a good example because it happened in 96. So whatever, maybe E.T., there could have been a screening at the school. So those kids would have an idea of what an alien is supposed to be, as opposed to a typical someone in the middle of nowhere in Zimbabwe or even in some of the villages in South Africa. More than anything, it's going to be like me buying a car and going back home, or buying a certain type of car and I go back home to Kroonstad, where I was born. It's a 2-hour drive from here. It's not a village, but it's a small town, right? I could be the only person in the whole town who's got like a Discovery 3, or at the time anyway, like 15 years or whatever, many years ago, or a Range Rover Sport. So you drive into that thing, kids are going to run alongside the car in the street. Adults are going to ask to see what does the car look like inside, even if they have like a Mazda or a Toyota or whatever car. So then in Africa, typically, if some sort of a spaceship was to, that would be like me arriving in a Rolls Royce back home in the village, or in the small town, and everyone wanting to see. So you're more likely to have the kids from the lower LSM hanging around trying to see, because some of them will probably even be like, yo, man, do you have $10 for me? Because for them, they're just like, I'm trying to buy some.
Right. Well, it's just that two things. In terms of them like seeing aliens on TV, that would account for some of it, but they all said that they had the same telepathic experience where this thing communicated to them telepathically. Also, 60 kids saw it, and it was broad daylight. So I just don't think 60 people, and they made this point in a documentary where, and I thought about it literally. Then as soon as I thought about it, they said it in a documentary. At least in the U.S., one person can say, "I saw that guy shoot that guy. I was 200 feet away, but I know it was that guy, and I know he shot that guy, and that's enough. We're okay. That guy's in jail for life." 60 people say they saw something, and we're like, no, you didn't see it. That's crazy to me.
The same as the guy who saw the sniper who shot Trump in the air climbing the warehouse, and he kept telling the cops, yo, there's someone here climbing. Then the cops were just like, nah, nigga, you're crazy. The guy's climbing the warehouse. He's setting up his rifle. Yeah, whatever, man.
Right. Yeah, somebody didn't want to stop it. That's what that was, but that's crazy.
It should be noted that there were other UFO sightings around the school in the days before the school incident.
That builds some evidence. But you guys, it is time to put our thinking caps on. And when we return, we'll settle this once and for all and figure out what really maybe happened. Now that we've reviewed the evidence, let's give our theories. I'll go first. And my theory is that it is real. And this alien is a part of the same crew as Valiant Thor. This is obvious because it's the same message over and over again. These aliens are coming and saying, hey, take care of planet Earth. The fact that it's the same message also is wild that there's 62 of them, just like Dwayne was saying, and they telepathically all shared the same message. That is wild. I'm 100% in on it. It happened. It is aliens. It's Valiant Thor. And at best, maybe it's like a government person a la Men in Black. But we also know the Men in Black were real. Those are real freaking CIA agents that used to go to people who saw UFOs. So for some reason, the aliens at that point in time were now wearing the suits. Like maybe they were recruited by the CIA. I don't know. Now we're getting really convoluted. I don't know why the alien's wearing a suit. I can't explain that to you. But Valiant Thor also had style. So that's my theory. It's Valiant Thor.
My theory is, well, I actually believe this is actually one of the stories I believe more than any of them. So this is like right after the Japanese car industry was kind of struggling a little bit. Mm-hmm. So they went to Africa to start a plant, like a car plant, and they went to Zimbabwe. And so these Japanese people got out of the car, and everyone's like, aliens.
You're saying they were not aliens; they were Japanese.
They were actually just Japanese people. Yeah, they were a little short.
Interesting.
And when they spoke telepathically, they were just speaking some kind of funny, and so they were just kind of they thought they were saying something, and then yeah, so it was just Japanese people. They were just there. They wanted to build a car factory, but they just got confused a little bit.
My theory is this: in actuality, I think Koji Cat, we all agree. Like, I really think this happened, to be honest. But my theory that I'm going to submit to you is that it wasn't the Japanese; it was the Chinese. Here's why, though. China knew that they were, becoming a superpower. They weren't there yet, but it was happening. They were already making everything. They're like, we're next up. And when you become a superpower, part of that is raping Africa, right? You just need the resources in Africa. Maybe I shouldn't say that way, but you need the resources. It's just how, like, when the Black Panthers were doing their thing, it's basically a student organization, right? With tough talk. What elevated it was the FBI, CIA planted members in the Black Panthers to rev things up. So you got to understand that sometimes the art of war is tricky, right? So China knew they needed to go in eventually and use African resources. So they're like, well, let's go in, target some affluent kids, give them this message, trick them, make them think it's aliens, discredit them, which will also discredit the message, which will also sort of like distract people. So the message of like, don't overuse resources and take care of the planet, that message gets locked into these crazy kids saw some aliens. It's almost like someone catches someone cheating and they look at their phone and they're like, oh my God, you're still texting that person? And instead of addressing it, they go, why'd you look at my phone?
Mm.
The message of don't sort of like take care of the planet, it gets almost convoluted and mixed up with these people saw an alien, and that just discredits the whole thing. And so it just primes the situation for China to come in and now go, yeah, those kids were crazy, right? Anyway, we need some resources.
You thought it was the Chinese. I thought it was the Japanese.
Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe many years ago, I'll dismiss it and just be like, whatever, watch too many movies. But like I said, I've actually met someone who's, told me their story, how they've traveled to even speak to aliens or contact them. So when you guys have time, there's a man called Credo Mutwa. He died recently. Call him a soothsayer or a traditional healer or a sangoma. So he had predicted a few things in the future, including that President Thabo Mbeki, who came in after Nelson Mandela, would not finish his term. And he didn't finish his second term. His party got rid of him after almost 2 years. Right. But that's just one of the things that he predicted. And same then, he's also had his own experiences and sightings with UFOs or aliens.
Oh, wow.
Or even communicated with them. But he's one of the most credible people. His name is Credo Mutwa, Credo Mutwa. So he's one of the oldest people that, trusted. People have studied him, and there's been books and tons of videos on YouTube about it. So because then I started listening or at least following some of his works, and I've met other people, and the world has really, really advanced. So look at it this way for me, right? We are not the only ones in the universe. We all know that. And already some of Americans have gone to space, gone to the moon. They're trying to go to Mars. So the fact that with the little bit of intelligence and technology that we have, we can travel that far. There's no way aliens are not sitting out there going, actually, what's happening in Zimbabwe, right? Does anyone wanna go to New York? Just, fill up the space station. We can fill it up on the way. You know what I mean?
That's great.
I think other life beings are also trying to be like, what the hell is going on Earth? Because things used to be cool. There never used to be this, but now there's like earthquake. So I think for now, that's why I said I'm willing to go and even do more research and find out.
That's great.
If some of those people are still alive,
Oh, they are. You think that it did happen, like Cat, basically?
I think it happened. And I think if it had happened in today's time with all the cell phones and social media, and there'd be a little bit more evidence, or at least more people that could say, look, I saw something take off, or can you see from where we're standing? And I think it's all about the same way human beings are trying to find life on other planets. I think equally other human life forms are also curious about what we are doing on Earth.
I believe it.
I just don't know about them coming and then they take you or kidnap you and they put stuff in your ass or experiment on you. Then you come back and you're just like, nah, they just took me for the weekend, nothing like that.
It's like a situationship with the aliens.
Meanwhile, they took you to a puff daddy party in some space.
That's funny. That's funny.
So at this point in the show, it's time for us to pick the unofficial official story, one that will answer the question once and for all. So which theory do we want to go with today of all four of our theories? I'll vote first. I vote for Dwayne's. I think they were Chinese because Because they eventually went on to do the, what's it called? The road belts, the beltway. I don't remember what it's called, but where they built a bunch of things all around the world. So it wouldn't make sense if they had like a little ship, and they had the balloon that they sent last year to America. They had some kind of weird little ship, and like a tiny little petite man came out in a suit.
Come on.
Hey.
Well, I mean, there's Yao Ming, so they're not all petite. We know that.
Oh, I'm gonna vote for yours too, Dwayne.
This is crazy because I was actually going to vote for Katz and David's, but only because the other thing I think is that aliens are probably not supposed to interfere, just like Star Trek when he visits places. But I think there's always going to be that conscientious alien who can't help himself. And that's another reason why they don't go to they don't broadcast it, because they're not allowed to. So it's like a little sneaky thing. I'll just tell these kids and maybe they'll get the message. And then that alien who spoke to those kids, when they got back home, they were like, Zicknard, in the conference room, I need to talk to you right now. You know, like he got in trouble for doing that. You know what I mean?
What's weird about what the alien said is that actually in the 1950s, that's what the alien abductions were. They would take you to space and then tell you that you had to protect the Earth. But pretty much after the 1950s, that didn't happen anymore. Mm-hmm. So that's what's weird about this one. By the 90s, they were already doing, like David said, experiments and hybrid aliens. And like that was like the more typical, quote, abduction stories. Nowadays, like back in the 1950s, they called them space brothers and space sisters. They weren't even aliens. They were space brothers and space sisters because they were like, all the messages were really great, like no nuclear proliferation, don't destroy the Earth, that kind of stuff.
Just that I think that they're not supposed to interfere, but they see us going astray and they can't help it. Also, it almost feels like their message doesn't match our current system of capitalism. So it gets sort of like shot down.
So who are you voting for, Dwayne? Come on, Dwayne. Who are you voting for?
I'm voting for Kat. But I guess Kat or Dave. I'm voting for Kat. Yeah, Kat. I know I'm not voting for my own theory, which is crazy, but go ahead.
Okay, so it's 2-1, David. Who are you voting for? Which theory are you voting for?
Look, if we're going with the Japanese and is it the Japanese?
Well, Japanese or mine was the Chinese.
Japanese or Chinese? I think the Chinese are pulling some moves, guys. Look, I mean, if you watch what China has done in the last 15 to 18 years, bro, just in the world, it's unbelievable. From rail, especially rail, to move that many people and the technology that they're doing. And remember, they're also now in Africa, and they've almost outcompeted the United States in terms of building projects and roads and bridges and funding. And so I'm saying maybe the Chinese have always had a plan for Africa. It just started in Zimbabwe in 1994.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is the official story.
But we'll take another break. And when we return, we'll find out what we'd say to an alien if they showed up in front of us.
If an alien showed up in front of us, what would you say to an alien? And what would you want to know?
I would say, can you tell me the future? And can you tell me if my ex is going to come back?
Oh my God.
And if the answer is no, go away.
That's what you would ask an alien? Oh my God.
Look, I do not pass the Bechdel test.
I guess what I would want to know is why have they been so low key? You guys know we're here. We don't know. We kind of think you're here. And why are you leaving us up for debate?
I have another question. I want to ask the alien, can you take back JD Vance? He is not passing, and he is definitely an alien.
All right. I would personally, what I would ask is I would want him to give me some ideas for movies that I could write that are about aliens. And then hopefully, assuming that they're aliens with a lot of money, they could fund my own movies. Maybe create a film fund, so we can start just creating alien. I could do PR in other words, I could do PR for the aliens. I could just make them seem like they're really nice. So by the time they invade and take over, I'll be a collaborator, so that they'd want me to, stick around and not kill me and my family.
Ah, smart. I like that. But I would also try to get them to explain crypto.
I would also ask the alien, can they make my dog live as long as me?
Aw, okay, that's a good one. I like that one.
I'm gonna ask them, how do we fix Africa? Give us some resources or money. Let's start building infrastructure in this continent, because it makes no sense at the moment. It absolutely makes no sense. Richest place on earth on minerals, but semi-wars everywhere, everybody coming to take for themselves. So I'd kind of be like, yo, we need to stop this nonsense of all these other countries coming here and taking our minerals. What do we do? If we need to build some roads, infrastructure, and then we can make some movies and start drawing the public.
Right.
That's the ultimate goal.
Right.
If the infrastructure story is too long, just give me some cash. You want to make movies in Africa.
You might just need like some of the stingray lasers, just so that when people do come to take, you can point the laser at them and be like, all right, here's what's going to happen. We're going to let you take some, but you're going to compensate us properly, and you're going to teach us, or the aliens will teach you. So I like that. Thank you, David, for coming on with us. Please tell people where they can follow you.
On Twitter, it's my name, David Gao1, with the number 1. And that's because there's a Japanese illustrator whose name is David Gao. And he took the handle.
That's
he took the handle
crazy.
before I.
That's crazy. That's crazy. And Kao is spelled K-A-U.
Yeah, he took the handle and he took the .com as well. So I promise he doesn't even use it, not even active. So at some stages he used to send me inquiries because people would, I guess, go info@davidgao.com and try to book a comedian. And then he'd forward.
That's nice of him.
That's funny. That's nice of him.
That's pretty funny.
So on X or Twitter, it's David Gao1, the number, my name and the number 1. Instagram is just David Gao. TikTok, Facebook is David Gao Comedian. Oh yeah, YouTube also is David Gao Comedian. Yeah, man, it's been a pleasure. It's quite dope hanging out.
Thank you all so much for listening. There are almost 3 million podcasts, and we're honored you chose ours to listen to. Please check out our website, unofficialofficialstory.com, for show notes to hear our past episodes. Please follow us on Instagram, X, TikTok, and YouTube.
And if you like the podcast, please share it with your friends, family, and even your enemies. You'll be doing a lot to help us keep bringing exciting and fun content every month.
Yes, and please consider writing a review of our show on the platform you use to listen to this podcast. We know it's a pain in the butt, but it does go a long way in helping the show. It helps us reach new listeners, grow our show, and most importantly, it enables us to keep putting out the content that we hope you enjoy.
And also, before we get to the end here, I just want to plug real quick that we have a new podcast, a narrative podcast, a fictional podcast called Elucidity that I wrote and produced. And Dwayne was one of the lead actors, and happy to announce we were number 1 on the Apple charts for a good week or 2.
Nice.
So we're really excited. So definitely should check that out. So please join us next month when we celebrate the 45th anniversary of the Vanishing Hotel. Where did it go? There are all these stories of these people, like these couples going to this hotel, checking in, and then they come back like another day and there's nothing there. So we're going to be looking at one of those cases and trying to decide what happened.
Airbnb. Messed it up for everybody.
All right, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys.
Thank you. See you guys.